Hello, and welcome back to Prism and Company. Hello, everybody. Or should I say, on the docket today, because it bothered me that I didn't say that. Okay, now that that's out of the way. Hello, everybody. It's been a hot minute since we've talked, since it was just me and you. Let's take this time. Let's have a cup of tea. I'm in the mood for some biscuits with some butter and some honey drizzled over the top of it, or to go the total opposite way. Maybe like soup, like good beef noodle soup, but like good soup with like fresh veggies in it. I'm hungry. I forgot to eat dinner, I just realized. So that is what it is. So, Colin, I hear you asking me, first of all, why are you talking about food, not tarot cards? Second of all, where have you been? Well, my friends, I have been finishing the OceanDry tarot. I literally want to weep right now. I'm so excited. So excited, apparently, that I can't actually speak in human words. Now, this that I'm holding in my hands, as much as I'm making it seem like this is the finished deck, it's not actually the finished deck. It's missing 6 cards. I'm picking them up tomorrow morning. It's late, or I'd actually be screaming. I'm screaming on the inside. I've been screaming on the inside for days. Because it's done. After 6 years, it's done. It's done. It's done. It's not an act. It's done. Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to take a break here. Now, oh my God, I gotta actually take a sip of water. Holy crap. In my last video, I talked about the colors of the deck and the color systems and how things kind of came together. Hold, please. Okay, we're calming down. We're bringing it back down to like a 4. We were at a 10. We need to bring it back down. We're like a 7 right now. Okay, we're sliding into 6. What was I saying? Who am I? Guys, did I tell you the whole thing is done? Like every card. Like if you pull out a card, it'll be one of them because they're all done. There won't be any card that you can't pull out because all of them are finished. So you can, oh my God, I can't even right now. I don't think I locked my screen, so it's gonna change colors and whatever, but I don't care because I'm so darn excited. In the last video, okay, I think I'm really back now. In the last video, we talked about the colors, the loveliness that makes up the visuals of the deck, and all the different things that I did to systematize them, whether that would be the cross-suit kind of blending of colors or the intra-suit distribution of color palettes of 3, or the sort of hierarchical application of the number 6 when it comes to distributing colors, or how every single color appears exactly the same amount of times in the deck, but just in different cards and suits and places. But I think the real question that a lot of folks have been asking since I started talking about this deck are the major arcana, and specifically the numbers. For example, the moon in this deck is number 21. The lovers is 4. The sun is 0. If you know tarot at all, your brain is probably like twitching right now, just like, what? Why is the priestess number 5 and not number 2? And then you look and you're like, wait, why is the Hierophant number 2 and not number 5? They're backwards. And and every single major arcana has been renumbered. There is not a single one that retains its normal numeration. So this was another thing that was much like the colors, not necessarily like intentional. And obviously it was intentional in that I wanted to do it, but it wasn't like I picked the number 12 for justice. I didn't say, justice feels really 12 to me. I, like I do, created a system and then allowed the system to breathe and express itself. And it just so happens that the way I did it, every single number was changed. And honestly, thank goodness, because if there was like all of them were different except for 2 cards which were the same, it would have driven me so crazy. Like I would have literally redone the whole thing until they were all different, but boom, just like first time out, got it. And I say first time out, it took me freaking forever to get it done. Oh my God, I need to get going. We need to look at this right now. But before we really dive into that, I have some disclaimers about my numbering system and tarot in general. So let's take a look at that. It almost feels to me like my disclaimers in like every video are me like pre-apologizing for what I'm about to say. Thank you, growing up in the Midwest. We're gonna let that be what it is. My disclaimers. Here I have the normal, what in the heck is this called? Rider-Waite Smith deck. This is the Albano weight coloration of it, but like the very traditional line work by Pamela Coleman Smith, and the major arcana with their traditional numbers, at least a version of the traditional numbers. I have an insane amount of respect for the traditional numbering of a tarot deck. I think in many ways it's perfect, and like, why even touch it? Why even change it? So don't take my renumbering as like, I think this is wrong in any way, because there is so much thought and time and passion. Where are my majors? Jeez. There we go. That have been poured into these things that they're just like, in many ways, absolutely flawless. So much respect right there. I'm not trying to like rewrite the tarot deck or anything either. I think this is in many ways like the most valid tarot deck because it is the one that kind of kicked things off, at least in a modern lens, or even like old Marseille decks. I mean, there's so many historical examples to pull from, but all of those numerations, like so carefully constructed, and you know, it's really, really amazing what a tarot deck does. Let's see, I'm like reading through my disclaimers here. I did not do this quickly. This was a complicated and super duper stressful process. Like I literally lost sleep over this because I was so upset, first of all, that I would be making these changes in some ways. And then that people would like freak out. It was like a whole thing to kind of convince myself to be like, no, Colin, it's fine. Do what you want to do. Like express this deck the way that you want to make it. And on that note, I am super happy with how it turned out, like ridiculously happy. So don't take all my disclaimers here either as like, oh, I'm trying to backpedal. Like, no, I want to own it. You know, I put those numbers on the cards because I think for that deck, for the OceanDry Tarot, there are the correct numbers. And I am so excited about that. And I think that both of these things can be true, that the OceanDry has the correct numbers and that the Rider-Waite Smith or any other deck, you know, whatever their numbering system, also has the right numbers. I think that there is basically infinite space for tarot to grow and change and evolve and do different things, because what this tool is to me anyway, is a tool for storytelling. And that storytelling manifests in so many different ways, whether it's helping us solve problems or understand ourselves better or be more creative or more engaged in life or have a more magical worldview. There are so many things I could say about tarot holistically in the way that people use it. But I think that, you know, if you want a traditionally numbered deck, by all means, I will not be offended. You know, go for it. If you want a different flavor, try mine or don't. Like what I made this 100% for me, and I'm just so excited to share it because I'm so excited about the ideas behind it. But if you disagree or are confused or anything, honestly, that's a conversation I would love to have. As long as everybody likes to be, you know, respectful and wants to legitimately have a conversation, that's so cool. We get to talk about this sweet thing we love. And how could you not just be absolutely infatuated and in love with that? It just makes me so happy. And guys, did I mention that I'm done with the whole thing? It's been like 6 years. I can't. I'm still on cloud 9. I'm going to hit post-project depression really soon. Okay. But there's a lot to go into. Thank you, the Rider-Waite deck, for making your cameo appearance. Always lovely to see you. That sounded sarcastic. It really is always lovely to see it. As we dive in, though, here, I need to do some backtracking. Before I can tell you what changes I made and why I made them, I think it's really important to understand how a Golden Dawn-based deck is constructed. And now when I say a Golden Dawn-based deck, I mean one of two things. Either the aforementioned, oh my God, I forgot it again, a Rider-Waite Smith deck or Waite Smith deck. Rider didn't do shit. And again, the Albano weight version here. This is the most well-known modern deck. This is the one that ignited tarot fever back in whenever the heck it was printed. Or my sweet, beautiful, Thothy love, the Thoth Tarot by Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida Harris. These two decks were created under a essentially a system of rules or of like a very specific structure. And that structure was created by the Golden Dawn. If you are not familiar with the Golden Dawn, okay, I was going to try and find justice in here, but I apparently cannot look for cards and talk at the same time. Why are these flipped? It doesn't matter. This is not interesting, Colin. The Golden Dawn is an esoteric order of occultists. Ooh, there's a bunch of random words that mean basically nothing. They mean things. They're okay. Okay. Golden Dawn is a group of individuals, like white men in this case, that studied Hermetic Kabbalah and like Christian mysticism and use that as a lens to kind of view self-development. And they called that self-development many things: alchemy or magic with a K spelled at the end. And it is blurry, at least to me, where the lines are of like, did they actually think that they were doing magic? Did they think it was all internal and all within the head? I think it might have been blurry for them too, but I think that they really embraced that magical worldview. And they used a very specific tool, which is part of Christian Kabbalah, called the Tree of Life. So if we slide these over, insert the Tree of Life. And now the Tree of Life is a really interesting symbol. It has a lot of information packed into it. And this symbol really represents kind of how a tarot deck is constructed in many ways. And now I'm going to make it go away for a moment. I think personally that tarot did not start with such an esoteric beginning. It probably started as a game. And, you know, who knows? Like, that's just my take on it, because I'm a pretty earthy, crunchy worldview. But let's say that did happen. You take something like the Tree of Life and tarot, and they have so many beautiful things that cross over and kind of like interlock that it just makes sense to kind of put some thought and effort into trying to like systematize that. And that's really what the Golden Dawn did. They took all of these Sephiroth and paths and things that we'll talk about here in a bit and assigned all of this meaning to tarot cards. And that's when you see, you know, like the Emperor card here, the Justice card, you get all of these extra associations, like justice is associated with the symbol of the scales and the sword, but also the zodiac sign of Libra. The Emperor over here is associated with the zodiac sign of the ram, of Aries, the ram. And also in many ways like the planet Mars, and with lambs and with Christ. And I mean, there's like so many different layers of things that you could put onto these cards that stack up in different ways. And so many people have stacked up so many things in so many different ways that we just have this insane network and web of meaning now. There is so much. You could write a book, and I'm sure people have, about a single major arcana card, because there are so many symbols, so many associations and references. And that idea is very, very Western occultist. The word occult means to make something hidden or mysterious. And occultists, these kind of like magic with a K orders of people, worked to create complicated symbols and things that made this information harder to come by. Like, you really had to be indoctrinated in many ways into the order and like move up through the ranks to start uncovering it. And that sort of initiatory process is also shown in the tarot deck too. This is treated in many ways like a book that you read in, say, the Order of the Golden Dawn, as opposed to a deck of cards that you use, although they still did use it for divination. Now, I'm no like occultist expert. Hopefully that wasn't so rambly that it was insane to follow. But, you know, I did look into enough of it to understand at least their construction with the Tree of Life and some of the associations that they made. So as I was doing that, I came across a lot of things that didn't feel right. And maybe not didn't feel right, but really tweaked my very systematic brain. And they were, to me, obvious things like, why didn't they do this, or why didn't they change that? So those are the things I really want to focus on. But before we get to those changes, it's all about looking at what they did. So let's freaking do that, because oh God, we're going to be here all day. And by the way, I don't mind being here all day because this is probably my favorite thing in the universe to talk about. And if you're watching this, I imagine it's probably among your favorite things in the universe to talk about too. But now I'm not talking about cards, I'm talking about that. So we're moving on. So, Colin, I hear you asking, what is the tree of life? Well, let me tell you, friend, with these five, oh, damn it, I couldn't think of a good rhyme. I'm sorry, I'm a little sweary today. I'm sorry. If this was the perfect version of life, I would have broken into song and dance, and like other people's hands would have like creeped in from the edges and started singing with me. But I'm sitting here by myself, so it's not going to happen. Just pretend though. Let's all pretend for a moment that did happen and how sweet that would have been. Okay, insert the tree of life. This is the whole thing all together. But what is it made of? Bam! It is made up of 10 Sephiroth. The Sephiroth are these circles that make up the tree of life. And these circles are the minor arcana and the court cards in the tree of life. So these are all numbered 1 through 10, boom. And you can see that they kind of read like backwards to a English speaking eye. So you start with 1 at the top, then it's 2 on the right, 3 on the left. So it kind of, reads down in that way where we might expect it to read the other way. I am almost certain that you read Hebrew that way. So that would make sense because it's a Hebrew symbol. That is officially out of my depth though, so we won't go there. Either way though, this is the way that it's numbered, and each of the Sephiroth represent that number in the tarot deck. So there is, take the 3 of Cups, for example. The 3 of Cups refers to the 3 on the Tree of Life, which is Bina, or Binah. I'm going to say the names of the Sephiroth as I know them. I've only ever read them. I've never heard them spoken. So if I say them different than you, just let that be another thread in our narrative that we can weave together. So 3 refers to Bina, for example. Just grabbing my deck off to the side here. 8 refers to Had on the bottom. Each of the Sephiroth is named and means something. So when you look at that Sephiroth through the lens of one of the 4 classic elements, those of course being fire, water, earth, and air, then you get a specific meaning. So that, in some ways, is how you develop the meaning for a tarot card. Now, there's, of course, many other ways to do that too, be it numerologically or archetypally. I mean, there's like so many ways that you can go about it. Or even just going by like historical or common practice definitions, all those types of things. But these are where these fit in. These are the specific Sephiroth where the court cards fit in. And boy, I hope to remember to actually, I'm going to put some court cards here on the side so I remember to go back and actually put that overlay in, because that's the kind of thing that I will for sure forget. So these, just like court cards fit the least properly in for me normally, they also fit the weirdest on the Tree of Life. They feel like they're just jammed in. But if you're interested in reading more, there is a spectacular book by Lon Milo Duquette about the Thoth Tarot that really goes into the kind of fairy tale narrative of what these court cards are trying to do. It's essentially your higher self trying to woo itself, your lower self, I should say, back to being universal oneness with your higher self so the cycle can restart itself. I'm saying self a lot. But it gets kind of involved. He does an incredible job making it very digestible and very easy to understand. Okay, so those are the court cards. Those are in there. Then on top of that, we have, boom, the 22 paths. And now these 22 paths directly relate to the major arcana in the deck. So when we have, say, justice or fortune, these refer to specific places on the Tree of Life. And those places really help inform certain things. So for example, the strength card in a quote unquote normal tarot deck or a traditionally numbered tarot deck is right below something called the abyss, which separates the top 3 Sephiroth from the bottom Sephiroth. And it's a place where you have to kind of take this leap where your mind awakens in a way that you can't understand until you cross it. But it straddles right along that, like a lion kind of prowling, and it takes strength to jump over it. Or, I'm looking through my cards here now, take the Priestess. The Priestess is one of the cards traditionally that crosses right in the center. I don't actually have this in front of me, so I think I'm pointing at the right thing, who knows. But it's the long line on top that crosses the abyss from our friend Keither up at the top to Tifereth down in the center. And any of these paths that cross the abyss are like these final kind of entry points into the higher self, into higher being. This card is often depicted with a camel on it because it is the camel that carries you across the desert. It is that endless trudging journey that you have to be self-sustaining, just like a camel's humps are self-sustaining it to make it over. The abyss is often referred to as like a desert because it's so harsh and vast. And there is certainly no, words are hard. No, I've used the desert extensively in the narrative for my tarot for that very reason. The word that I was thinking of was gone. It may never come back, who knows? But anyway, all of these little things, like where these cards are positioned, what the Hebrew letters associated with them are, all the meanings are so incredible and beautiful, and there has been so much thought and time put into them that the idea of changing anything was really intimidating. Very intimidating. Just because I felt like I had to put that much thought into it. Spoiler alert, I didn't. That's like thousands of people over hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm not going to match that. I'm only one man. I can only do so many random ass tarot things. But I digress. Let me move these off to the side. All of these paths relate to a Hebrew letter. And if we look at the Hebrew alphabet, there are 3 mother letters, 7 double letters, and 12 single letters. Now, the 3 mother letters relate to the classic elements besides earth, so fire, water, and wind, or air. The 7 double letters refer to the 7 classic planets. That is, let me see if I can do them no-scoping here. The sun, the moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. Hey, I got them. That's 7. Great. So those are our 7 classic planets. Those are the ones that are visible without a telescope, by the way. And then the 12 single letters refer to the signs of the zodiac. And if you look at our beautiful tree of life here, you will see that there are 3 horizontal lines, there are 7 vertical lines, and there are 12 diagonal lines. So they line up perfectly, right? No, this is how the letters are distributed currently. So you can see they're kind of haphazardly placed, I'll say, but there's a very specific reason they're placed this way. But that was one of those first things that I was like, like why? Like what's the why behind that? I need to sort of know. I think much of this was forced into order by tarot's very non-esoteric origins. So take tarot as a game, for example. It goes very much by class. So you have like the fool first and the magician, like the beggar and the entertainer, and then the priestess. So back in the day, like the woman was not as high up as like the man in social order. So if we're looking at like very classical, again, not in modern days, that's like the path that it was following. And then so on and so forth. And it gets a little like floaty towards the end as far as how the class system is kind of working, but you can really see the roots of it starting to form there. And, you have a tarot deck printed, you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them by the time the Golden Dawn gets their hands on them. Or I don't actually know how many. You have a bunch of them, especially out of France and things, that they can't really change it. They're stuck with that order. And now they are going back and superimposing meaning over the top of it. Or you might subscribe to the worldview that it was built with this in mind. It was built with this esoteric layer already baked into it. Either way, totally cool. I can float with either of those ideas, quite frankly. But for me anyway, the fact that these distributions of the letters from the Hebrew alphabet don't match up with their extremely obvious places where they could go on the tree, to me feels like their hands were tied, they had to make do, and they did a really good job, but something had to give, and that was the placement on the tree of life itself. So that was that. So let's take a look at what exactly this tree of life is trying to represent, but I'm going to do a quick cut so I can do a little editing magic behind the scenes. Magic, baby. And now that all the magic is over, we can continue with the video. Yes, my audiobook will be on sale with all of these dulcet, sultry tones for the okay, moving on. So we have the Tree of Life. Now we know generally how it's constructed. It's made up of those circles, the Sephiroth, and then the lines, the paths. But what is it actually trying to depict? What does that mean? What are these things referring to? The Tree of Life is a Christian symbol ultimately. Christian Kabbalists made it, or Kabbalists. And so there is a lot of Christian overlay here. And I spent much of my life being a Christian and loved every single moment of it. But that is no longer where I'm at kind of spiritually. So, I'll use those terms because I think they're handy. But I think it speaks to a more broad ideal, a more applicable message to any creed, religion, whatever you want to call it. But it's handy, so I'll use it because I think a lot of people are familiar with it too. Here again, we have the Tree of Life, and we have all of these Sephiroth, and these Sephiroth follow the path to create the world. So when God creates the world, he follows this path. And it starts up at Kether at the top, probably somewhere around there. You know where it is because you can see it. That felt aggressive. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Let's back it up for a second. We're all friends here. Oh, goodness, we're all friends here. So we're starting up at Kether, and then we're moving through the Sephiroth, and they are giving us different aspects of things. So God creates the earth in 7 days, let's say. He's kind of creating different animals along the way. That is not what this is trying to depict. This is depicting God, whatever, creator, deity, or the Godhead, if you will, making reality. So Kether is one. It's a single point, much in the same way that the Fool is a single point. And then you move to Chokmah, number 2, and you get a line. So now we have one dimension. And then we move to Bina. So we move to 3, and now we've made a triangle. So we're sitting in 2 dimensions. And then we move down to Chesed, which is that 4th line, which gives us depth. So now we enter the 4th dimension, and then time comes into place, and space and understanding. And each of these triangles that are made by these Sephiroth kind of represent different big picture ideas within us. Things like our higher selves or our emotional selves. That is kind of watering it down, but they're referring to those types of things. And you make your way all the way through these. Honestly, to me, it gets confusing after the number 4. It really spirals off into some just random stuff. To get to 10 seems wild. But the only thing in all of this that represents our human existence on Earth, the things that we can touch, is number 10, Malkuth. And that is the world, essentially, whether it's in tarot or just the world that we are all sitting in right now. And the idea with the Tree of Life is that we are at the bottom, we are at the world, and we have to work our way back up to Kether. If you watched my How I Read Tarot video, you'll know that I don't read the cards, normally from 0 to 21. I read them from 21 to 0, which is very Golden Dawn. I kind of read them backwards because we are climbing the Tree of Life. And, that's exactly what this is trying to depict, because this is the fall of man. This is our higher selves losing our lower selves and our lower selves becoming separated. It is that bottom Sephiroth specifically that breaks away. So let's introduce here this diagram. This diagram, that's my visual cue for myself, which is pre-fall. So the fall of man, if you will, or our higher selves becoming disassociated from our lower selves. Now, let me take this away for a moment. I want to talk about a Hermetic principle, and it's actually just sort of an occult, esoteric principle called as above, so below. You have probably heard this before, but what does it actually mean? As above, so below refers to the idea of very, 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 very large things mirroring or being similar to very, 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 very small things. On a very earthy, scale, this would be something like an atom. An atom has a nucleus, and then it has electrons that orbit it around the edge. And that looks a lot like a solar system, which has a sun and planets orbiting that sun. These two things that are cosmically different in scale behave in many ways exactly the same. And if you look at atoms on kind of a molecular level, there's like nearly as much space in there as there is space between, planets sometimes. Like the distances, relatively speaking, are like enormous. And there's probably some science person yelling at me right now that like, well, actually, there's a significant difference between the whatevers. The idea is a little more conceptual here. The fact that an atom looks and behaves so much like a solar system, quite frankly, is astounding. And there's all sorts of things you could point to kind of get those ideas, get those kind of cyclical, large and small ideas. The idea here is that we are the lower selves. We are our physical bodies are part of us, but not all of us, and they're what we know and how we exist and how we see things. But there is also the as above version of that, our higher selves, if you will. And I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what a higher self is, but I think the idea here would be our spirit, perhaps, or ourselves in a much more expansive, broad way. It is the part of us that is able to comprehend the universe. It's the very like woo-woo side of spirituality, or of why can I not think of any old words tonight? What is it called when you're like New Age? That type of idea. All of those fall into very kind of like higher self sort of domain things. But I think personally that our higher self operates in a very different way than we know, because our perspective is from down here. We're that bottom Sephiroth with all of this stuff up above us. So we look up and we're like, oh yeah, I get it. It's our higher self, like I get it. But like there's no way to know until you're like up there and like climbing the ladder and getting up, all integrated and juicy with it. Juicy with it? Whatever, that's fine. So that is essentially what's being depicted here. And there is something called the flaming sword or the lightning path. It has many different names, but it's essentially the path that God, deity or whatever, takes through these Sephiroth to like create the world. Oh man, I feel like we're going to be here forever. Actually, no, we're getting there. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff baked into the Tree of Life. But let's take a look at the Tree of Life and the pre-fall again. If you look at these lines, there's an error to me. Because if we take the pre-fall tree and just slide everything in the center row down a notch, except for Keither, which remains nailed in at the top, all of these lines make sense. The lines that are normally going up on the pre-fall tree are now bending down. The only exception are the ones that I've highlighted, which flip. They go the opposite way for some reason. And I've never been able to reconcile this. I've never read anything about why those lines would flip. I haven't even read a ton about the pre-fall. Like, I find it fascinating, but a lot of folks don't mention it and don't go there because we don't live there. We live in the post-fall tree, if you will. So that's the one to focus on because that's the only actionable one. But why these are flipped, I don't know. If you happen to know, I would love to know, because there's probably a super cool, smart reason that I just am unaware of. But anyway, that was another thing that was like nails on a chalkboard, just like, why? Why is that like that? So I changed it. And the moment I did that, I changed the Tree of Life. And I was like, ooh, this feels a little bit like sacrilegious. And I'll be honest, at this point, I don't care. At this point, I think it's just cool to tinker around and experiment with the ideas. But when I first did it, I was like, oh, Colin, who are you to even try this? But now I'm like, I'm a person who wants to think a little different. And, there's 150 million tarot decks that do it the other way. Why can't there be one that does it this way? So that is where that's at. Let me take a glance up to my notes. this is the moment in the video when I'm looking at the notes. Wow, isn't that... Okay, so I can't actually look at the notes and say this at the same time. So that's where I'm at. Oh, it says specifically, don't mention the error here, Colin. I guess I wanted to like save that as a big reveal. No, we're just going to talk about it as we get there. I'm not sure what I was going for. That's all fine. Yes. So all of these things together, we finally made it. This leads us to the current construction of the Tree of Life. Let's erase that away and boom, back with just the normal Tree of Life. This is like the OG version. All of that stuff together represents what goes into a traditional tarot deck. And then that informs the order of our cards because, oh, one last thing, we have to count our way down the tree. And this is counted kind of similarly to how the Sephiroth are numbered. It starts on the right and goes to the left, but it kind of like lilts its way down. It sort of does like one of these. It feels very like Kundalini serpent winding its way and like compressing and constricting itself as it goes from this like ephemeral, universal one nothingness down to this solid, crunchy, like brutally like dense earth. But that was another thing where I was like, I wonder why they numbered it that way. Like if we're coming from universal oneness, like why does it start on the side? Like I get that it's like going from 1 to 2, like that's kind of cool, but almost immediately that breaks because our next one is from 1 to 3. So it's not like we go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. There's all these extra lines in there that have to be like dealt with in many ways. And they're counting on the pre-fall, or excuse me, the post-fall Tree of Life. So after, you know, the mic has been dropped, if you will, after we have fallen from our higher selves, that is now how we're looking at this. And that's cool, you know, that's great. But I wanted to make an adjustment to that as well. So finally, let's take a look at what I did and the changes that I made. Hopefully now that we have all this context, and goodness gracious, I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, so be it. Now that we have all this context, hopefully it should be easy for me to be like, these are the things I changed and why I changed them. Let's take a look. A small note that I was trying to make back in that little last chunklet that I didn't was that this, you know, that Tree of Life that we were looking at informs something called the Fool's Journey. Now, I'm not going to go into the Fool's Journey here, but I will do it for sure in another video. But it's the idea that, you know, the tarot deck starts with 0, the Fool, and then he goes through the major arcana, or she, you know, they go through the major arcana and learn life lessons, essentially. It is someone starting off with no experience, no idea, breaking through on this journey and ending up as the world with literally everything. And they go through all of these steps and stages and challenges to get there. And that is beautiful and amazing. What happened, though, when I reorganized the Tree of Life and the numbers and everything, is it obviously changed the order of the cards. The Fool was no longer 0, the Sun was 0, and everything else changed in between. So it dramatically changed that journey as well. So that's the next one that I'm going to hope to do. Ooh, once I have all my cards in my hand, then I'll actually be able to show you visually with my cards what that journey looks like. Ooh, that's a juicy one I'm excited for. So, what did I change about everything, like the whole thing, the Tree of Life? The first thing I started with was the pre-fall tree. Now, this is the tree with the error kind of baked into it. If we took the normal Tree of Life that we see, the traditional one, and just jammed everything back up a post, it would look like this because the line is essentially facing the wrong way. So I changed that and I corrected, if you will, that error. Now, this is what they intended the tree to look like, but I thought, okay, let's do the same fall. Boom. Now, this is what the Tree of Life would look like afterwards. So if we take a look at these two side by side, you can see that this particular line switches. And to my eye, you know, this looks more even, I suppose. Like the pattern kind of follows all the way through. And it's not like I like it better. This is beautiful, and I've looked at it so much that it has this like intoxicating elegance to it. And also the fact, like, the cards that are on that upper facing paths, like, it's so choice. It's so choice and perfect. But, let's try something new. So we have everything kind of moving down at this point. So back to just the OceanDry tree of life at this point. So we have the pre-fall tree, the post-fall tree, which has now been updated. I am now going to assign all of the cards based on their current Hebrew letter, like their normal traditional Hebrew letter, but I'm going to put them in the quote unquote correct spot on the tree, the one that at least to my mind makes sense numerically. So for example, I put the 3 mother letters on the 3 horizontal lines, but I didn't just throw them on there. I put air at the top, I put fire in the middle, and water on the bottom, because that is the density of those elements. Air would float to the top, it is the lightest. Fire is somewhere in the middle. Water is the heaviest, so it would sink to the bottom. Then I put on the planets, and I did those from top to bottom in the order of the, oh my God, words are really hard, classical arrangement of planets, or no, I'm sorry, the modern arrangement of planets. So not how close they appear to be, but how close they actually are from the sun past the Earth to Jupiter or Saturn. So we started off with sun right in the center. And now right away, that brings up another thing that I did here, because if this was the Golden Dawn, they probably would have started on the right-hand side, because that is where like they kind of start everything on the right and then go to the left. For me, though, if divinity is reaching down, they are reaching down in the center of the tree of life. I forgot to mention this. The center line of the tree of life is the pillar of balance. It's the pillar of mildness. It is neither severe nor merciful. It is kind of like pure even. It's where everything is trying to return to. So that is where I want everything to start from. And then on the right side, we have the pillar of mercy. On the left side, we have the pillar of severity. And as with everything in the Golden Dawn, those names are not nearly as obvious as you might think. Severity, for example, sounds like the mean pillar, but severeness can also be kind. Like, parents can be severe in some ways to their children with rules because they want them to behave. It is merciful to let a child do whatever they want, but it might get hurt. And again, oversimplifying, but that's kind of the idea. So we're starting in the center, and then we're branching off and doing, again, I did the right to left thing to maintain a little bit of the traditional ordering, but I wanted, instead of to start on the right, to start in the center. So I applied all the planets, and then I did the same thing with the zodiac signs, but on their respective chunks. So now, even, Stevens, beautiful, lovely, everything is perfectly symmetrical. I don't need things to be perfectly symmetrical these days. There was a point in my life when I did, but you got to admit, there is something just really satisfying about such a nice dispersion of these colors. Just a quickie reminder, ding, in the corner, this is what it used to look like. This is what it now looks like. And again, beautiful, love it, absolutely amazing, pop, gone. This is gorgeous. I really like how this particular bit turned out. Then numbering. Now, numbering, for me, happened in the pre-fall tree of life. I wanted to number there in the higher self, where things are quote unquote perfect, and then let things kind of fall down into the post tree and let them lie where they will. So if we look at the pre-fall tree of life and we number it, I'm again going to start from the center and then kind of branch out to the right and branch out to the left and kind of like wind my way down. And then when we get to the post-fall tree of life here, it is just distributed as it is. It's a little bit messy, it's a little bit chaotic, but I absolutely love that, to be honest, because life is messy and chaotic. It just the way that things shake out, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel elegant, but the idea that just like switching one minor thing would make it feel elegant feels extremely human to me. Like, how many times have you thought like, God, if only this one thing were different, or like just little itty bitty thing is off, like everything would just fall into place. And even seen it happen sometimes, like that just, it feels right that you'd be able to shift something like that, and that there'd be like this cosmic alignment that just makes everything feel right. Or maybe that's the optimist in me. I don't know. Is that it? Okay, I think I explained it. I changed the shape of the tree of life because of a, error or a change that didn't vibe with me. I redistributed the cards along the tree to better suit their specific place, kind of a like predetermined place almost by the tree of life. I renumbered the cards starting in the center instead of starting on the sides because I wanted to be going from balance to unevenness. And then instead of ordering the post-fall tree of life, I ordered the pre-fall tree of life. And that's where I settled up. That is where I got my new numbering system for the OceanDry Tarot. If you have made it this far, you get another gold star because personally, I find this to be totally fascinating, but we've been looking at graphs this whole time and not even tarot cards. So hats off to you. If you made it this far, drop me a comment. I'd love to know that you made it. And I'd be very curious to hear what you think as well. And now there's like 1,000,010 things that happen because of this. There are like so many different associations and ramifications and all of this that like ripple out of this decision to reorder the cards. But that is for another day, maybe even no day, because it's just like too much thought. It's one of those rabbit holes that you start to get buried in and you just can't get yourself out of it. You just can't. You can't. Bam, you can't. So, the thing that I'm very excited about in the video that I'm going to make next is the Fool's Journey, the new journey, I should say, because the narrative is completely different. I have stripped away almost every bit of it to kind of reflect how I built this deck. It'll hopefully make more sense once we talk about it. Hopefully this gives you a clearer idea of why I did the numbers the way I did, and that is all. If this was a hot garbage fire mess, I would legitimately love to know. I was trying to be clear and concise about this. And this is also me sort of like vamping and like getting ideas for how I might write this down and say a guidebook. So if it didn't click, please let me know, because I would love to reformulate these ideas and come at it from a different angle. If it did click, also let me know and what you think, because I'm super interested to know. Yeah. I'd be curious if anybody expected this. Like, I don't know how you would, because it's just wild, but whatever. With all that being said, I so hope you guys enjoyed. I had an absolute blast, an absolute delight. It was so true, so pure, so right. It was as if I was the seed in the ground below the soil, and you felt the water getting hotter boil. And then we rose like the leaves or the steam from the pot, and we felt the air, and it felt good and it felt hot, but the breeze swept by and it was cold and pure, and we crystallized into something, and then we weren't quite sure what we were. But then the rain fell down, because that's what happens when you water the ground. And that rain that fell on the seed below, of the water that rose, of the ice, of the snow, of the sun, of the heat, of the elements we see, of everything around us, of beauty, of purity, that is the mystery. That's a little taste of my spoken word poetry. No, I was just making that up. Anyway, everybody, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye.